Catherine Moore stepped off the stagecoach into air so thick with heat it felt like breathing through wool. The dust from the wheels hadn't settled before she realized the town of Copper Bend was smaller than promised, just a scatter of buildings baking under the relentless July sun, their paint peeling like sunburned skin. She clutched the carpetbag against her ribs, feeling the weight of 3 letters inside, each one signed James Hartwell, each one promising a fresh start and a man who needed a partner on his ranch. The driver tossed her trunk down with a thud that sent up a plume of red dirt. He didn't wait for payment, just clicked his tongue at the horses and rolled on toward the next town, leaving her standing alone in the shimmering heat with nothing but a name and an address she couldn't read on any of the storefronts. She scanned the wooden boardwalk, the saloon with its doors propped open, the general store with its window display of tin goods and rope. No one approached. No one even looked her way except for a mangy hound that sniffed once in her direction before retreating to the shade. An old man sat in a rocking chair outside the saloon, hat pulled low over his eyes, sleeping or dead, she couldn't tell which. Catherine pulled the first letter from her bag and read it again, though she'd memorized every word weeks ago. Meet me at the stage office. I'll be the one in the brown hat. We can ride out to the ranch together. It's not much, but it's honest work and I could use a steady hand. The children miss having someone who cares. J.H. She folded the letter carefully and walked toward the building marked Stage and Freight. Inside, a clerk sat behind a scarred desk, fanning himself with a folded newspaper. The room smelled of tobacco and old paper. A fly buzzed lazily near the window. "Excuse me," she said. "I'm looking for James Hartwell." The clerk stopped fanning. His eyes flicked over her, taking in the travel-worn dress and the careful way she held herself. "You the woman from Kansas?" "Yes." He set the newspaper down slowly, as if weighing his words. "Hartwell ain't coming." Her stomach dropped. "Is he hurt?" "No, ma'am. He's married. Got himself a wife about 10 days ago. Woman named Constance from over in Silver Falls. She had money. He had debts. Made sense to both of them, I reckon." Catherine couldn't speak. The heat pressed down on her like a hand. She felt the walls tilt slightly, or maybe it was her. The fly continued its lazy circles. The clerk watched her with something like pity. "I wrote him," she said quietly. "Told him I was coming." The clerk shrugged. "Mail's slow. Maybe he didn't get it in time. Maybe he did and figured you wouldn't show. Either way, he's spoken for now." She stood there, rooted to the floorboards, unsure what to do with her hands or her breath or the sudden, crushing realization that she'd sold everything she owned for a lie. Behind her, through the open door, she could hear the sounds of the town, horses nickering, men talking in low voices, a woman laughing somewhere far away. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Out at the ranch. 5 miles west. Follow the creek road till you see the cottonwoods. Can't miss it." She turned to leave, but the clerk called after her. "Ma'am, if I were you, I'd get back on the next stage. Ain't nothing out there for you now." Catherine didn't answer. She picked up her trunk, dragged it outside, and sat down on the edge of the boardwalk in the shade of the overhang. The sun beat down on the empty street. A tumbleweed rolled past. She closed her eyes and tried to think, but all she could hear was the blood pounding in her ears and the memory of her landlord's voice back in Kansas saying, "You got till the end of the month." She'd used her last coins for the stage ticket. Everything she owned was in that trunk. There was no going back. A shadow fell across her face. She opened her eyes and saw a girl, no older than 12, barefoot and sunburned, with tangled brown hair and a dress 2 sizes too small. The girl's knees were scraped, her arms thin as willow branches. She looked at Catherine like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You Catherine Moore?" the girl asked. "Yes." The girl nodded like she'd been expecting her. "I'm Lily." Pa said you weren't coming. Said you were just words on paper. Catherine sat up straighter. Your father is James Hartwell? Yeah. The girl shifted her weight, glancing back over her shoulder toward the edge of town. He married Miss Constance. She had land and money both. Got hitched 2 weeks ago, maybe less. I heard. She don't like us much, Lily continued, her voice matter of fact. Says we're too loud and too dirty and take up too much space. Pa mostly stays quiet when she says things like that. Catherine's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Lily shrugged like she was used to saying things that didn't make sense to people. We've been sorry for a while now. She paused, then added, there's 4 of us. Me, Samuel, Alice, and baby Ben. Ma died 2 years back in the winter. Fever took her. Pa tried after that, but he ain't good at the soft stuff. That's why he wrote you. Catherine looked down at her hands, at the calluses from years of washing other people's laundry, scrubbing other people's floors. He should have told me he changed his mind. He didn't think you'd come. Lily crouched down, her eyes sharp and searching. But you did. So maybe you ain't like the others. What others? The ones who promise and don't show. The ones who leave. The ones who look at us like we're a burden instead of people. Miss Constance looks at us that way. Like we're something stuck to her shoe. Catherine felt something crack open in her chest. She thought of her own childhood, passed between relatives who never wanted her, always the extra mouth, always the one too much. She knew what it was like to be looked at that way, to feel invisible even when you were standing right in front of someone. Where are you staying? Catherine asked. Out at the ranch. But Miss Constance don't like us in the house much during the day. Says we track in dirt and break things. So we mostly stay by the barn or down by the creek where it's cool. Catherine stood, brushing dust from her skirt. The sun had shifted, and the heat was beginning to ease just slightly. Take me there. Lily's eyes widened. You sure? Miss Constance won't be happy. I didn't come all this far to turn around at the first no. The walk to the Hartwell ranch was long and brutal under the afternoon sun. Lily led the way, her bare feet kicking up dust with every step. She talked the whole time, filling the silence with stories about her siblings, about the chickens they kept, about the way the creek ran cold even in summer if you knew where to dig your toes in. She pointed out landmarks, a dead tree split by lightning, a boulder shaped like a sleeping bear, a patch of wildflowers that her mother used to pick. Samuel's 8, Lily said. He don't talk much since Ma died, but he's good with the horses. They listen to him better than they listen to Pa. Alice is 5 and she cries at night sometimes. Still has bad dreams. Baby Ben's only 2. He don't remember Ma at all, which maybe is better. Catherine listened, saying little, but filing every detail away like kindling for a fire she wasn't sure she'd be allowed to light. The sun pressed down on them. Sweat trickled down her back. Her boots rubbed blisters on her heels, but she didn't complain. The ranch appeared in the distance, a low-slung house with a sagging porch and a barn that leaned slightly to the left. The cottonwoods Lily had mentioned lined the creek that ran behind the property, their leaves shimmering silver in the heat. Chickens scratched in the dirt. A pair of horses stood in the corral, flicking their tails at flies. The whole place had the tired look of something held together by will alone. Lily stopped at the edge of the property. You want me to go in first? No, Catherine said. I'll go. She walked up to the house, each step deliberate, and knocked on the door. Footsteps approached from inside, heavy and uncertain. The door opened. James Hartwell was tall, with sun-darkened skin and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many years squinting into the distance. His hair was dark, shot through with gray at the temples, and his hands were calloused from work. He wore a simple shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dusty trousers, and boots that had seen better years. He looked at her like he was seeing a ghost. "Catherine," he said, his voice rough. "James." They stood there for a long moment, neither moving. Behind him, Catherine could see into the house: simple furniture, a table with dirty dishes, a fireplace cold and empty despite the heat. "I didn't think you'd come," he said finally. "You made that clear." His jaw worked. "I wrote you. Told you not to. I never got that letter." He ran a hand through his hair, looking past her toward the barn where Lily had disappeared. "I'm sorry. I truly am. But things changed. I had debts. The bank was going to take the ranch. Everything my father built, everything I worked for, it was all going to be gone. Constance had money and she was willing. It wasn't about you. But it was about me," Catherine said quietly. "Because I gave up everything to come here. I sold my furniture, my mother's dishes, the quilt she made me. I have $3 to my name and nowhere to go back to. And now I have nothing." He flinched. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know yet." A woman appeared in the doorway behind him, tall and sharp-featured with pale hair pulled back so tight it stretched her skin. She wore a dress too fine for ranch work, blue silk with lace at the collar, and her eyes were cold as January frost. She looked at Catherine the way someone might look at a stray dog. "Who is this?" the woman asked. James turned. "This is Catherine Moore. The woman I wrote to before. Before we married." Constance's expression didn't change. "The one you said wouldn't come." "She came." Constance stepped forward, placing herself between James and Catherine like a fence post. Her perfume was strong, out of place in the dusty heat. "Well, she can leave. We don't need her here." Catherine met her gaze without flinching. "I came a long way. I'd like to at least speak with the children." "The children have nothing to say to you. They don't even know you. Let them decide that." Constance's mouth tightened. She turned to James, her voice sharp. "Tell her to go." But James didn't speak. He looked at Catherine, then at Constance, then down at his boots. The silence stretched like wire pulled too tight. From somewhere behind the house, a child's voice called out. "Miss Catherine." Lily came running around the corner, Samuel trailing behind her, a thin boy with dark eyes and a cautious way of moving. Behind them came a small girl with tangled blonde hair clutching a corn-husk doll, and finally, a toddler stumbling on unsteady legs. They stopped when they saw the adults on the porch, but Lily's face was bright with something that looked like hope. "You staying?" Lily asked, breathless. Constance's voice cracked like a whip. "Get back to the barn. All of you. Now." But the children didn't move. Samuel looked at Catherine with wide, cautious eyes, like a horse deciding whether to bolt. Alice hid behind Lily's skirt, peeking out. Baby Ben just stared, his thumb in his mouth. Catherine crouched down to their level. "I don't know yet," she said gently. "But I'd like to stay nearby for a while. Is there somewhere I could camp?" Lily pointed toward the creek. "Down by the cottonwoods. There's a clearing. We go there sometimes when Miss Constance gets angry. It's nice and cool." Constance stepped off the porch, her dress rustling. "Absolutely not. You are not setting up camp on our property. This is my land now." James finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "It's not your land. It's mine. The deed's in my name. You bought into it, but it ain't yours." Constance's face flushed. "It's hurting me," she said. "This woman is trying to worm her way into our lives. Can't you see that?" "I'm trying to figure out what to do next," Catherine said. "That's all." Constance turned to James, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "If you let her stay, I'll leave. I'll take my money with me and you can lose this ranch to the bank. Is that what you want? To lose everything over some woman you wrote letters to? James looked at her, then at the children, then back at Catherine. His face was a war zone, every line showing the weight of impossible choices. Catherine stood, brushing dust from her knees. I'll go, she said. But not because you told me to. I'll go because I won't be part of tearing this family apart more than it already is. She picked up her trunk and started walking toward the creek. Behind her, she heard Lily say, "Pa, don't let her go. Please." But no one called after her. The clearing by the cottonwoods was exactly as Lily described, a flat stretch of earth shaded by the trees, with the creek running cold and clear just a few feet away. The sound of water over stones was soothing, peaceful. Catherine set down her trunk and looked around. No tent, no supplies, just what she'd carried with her and the clothes on her back. She sat down on the trunk and put her head in her hands. For the first time since stepping off the stage, she let herself feel it all, the exhaustion, the humiliation, the crushing weight of being unwanted again. The journey from Kansas played through her mind, the hope she'd allowed herself to feel, the future she'd imagined. But she didn't cry. She'd learned long ago that tears didn't change anything. So instead, she stood up, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. She gathered stones from the creek and built a ring for a fire. She found deadfall branches and stacked them nearby. She washed her face in the cold water and drank until her stomach stopped feeling so hollow. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink, she had a small fire going and was boiling water in a tin cup she'd packed in her bag. Footsteps approached through the grass, soft and multiple. She didn't turn around, just kept tending the fire. "We brought you something," Lily's voice said. Catherine looked over her shoulder. All 4 children stood there, Lily holding a bundle wrapped in cloth, Samuel carrying a blanket, Alice clutching a battered tin plate, and baby Ben toddling beside them with a wooden spoon in his fist. Catherine stood slowly. "You didn't have to do that." "We wanted to," Lily said. She held out the bundle. "It's bread and some dried meat. Miss Constance don't count the food, so she won't notice it's gone. She never goes in the pantry herself." Catherine took it carefully, feeling the weight of it. "Thank you. This is very kind." Samuel set the blanket down by the fire without a word, then stepped back beside Lily. His eyes never left Catherine's face, studying her with an intensity that was almost unsettling. Alice approached shyly and held out the plate. "It's got a crack," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But it still works. Pa was going to throw it away but I kept it." "It's perfect," Catherine said, taking it gently. "I'll take good care of it." Baby Ben waddled forward and offered the spoon with a toothy grin. Catherine laughed, the sound surprising her, and accepted it. "You're very generous, Master Ben." The children settled around the fire as if they'd done it 100 times before. Lily sat cross-legged, her dress spread around her. Samuel kept his distance but stayed close enough to hear. Alice curled up against Catherine's side like a cat seeking warmth, and Ben climbed into her lap without asking permission. "Tell us about Kansas," Lily said. So Catherine did. She told them about the flat prairies and the way the wheat moved like water in the wind. She told them about the trains that passed through twice a day, their whistles echoing for miles. She told them about the way the sky looked so big you could get lost in it, how storms came up fast and fierce, how the earth smelled after rain. She told them about leaving, though she didn't tell them why. Some stories were better left for another time. "What was your house like?" Alice asked softly. "Small," Catherine said. "Just 2 rooms. But it had a garden, and in the summer I grew tomatoes and beans. There was a porch where I could sit in the evenings." "Why'd you leave?" Lily asked. Catherine hesitated. Sometimes staying in a place that feels empty is harder than leaving and hoping for something better. Samuel spoke for the first time, his voice soft and careful. Did you find something better? Catherine looked at him, at all of them. I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I hope so. When it grew too dark to see each other's faces clearly, the fire casting dancing shadows on the trees, Samuel finally asked the question Catherine had been waiting for. His voice was hesitant, almost afraid. Are you going to leave? Catherine looked at him, at all of them, these children who had been handed from one broken promise to another. I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I'm not leaving tonight. That seemed to be enough. They stayed a while longer, sitting in comfortable silence broken only by the crackle of the fire and the murmur of the creek. Baby Ben fell asleep in Catherine's arms, his small body heavy and trusting. Eventually, Lily said they had to get back before they were missed. She took Ben from Catherine carefully, and the children left the way they came, quiet and careful, shoes crunching faintly on dry grass. Catherine watched them go until the dark swallowed them whole. When she turned back to the tent, she noticed something new. 3 pairs of small shoes neatly lined up outside the fire ring, not forgotten. Placed. Left behind on purpose. She wrapped herself in the blanket and lay down beside the fire, staring up at the stars through the cottonwood branches. The Milky Way stretched across the sky, brighter than she'd ever seen it. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Another answered. The creek whispered over stones. And Catherine Moore, who had come west looking for a husband, closed her eyes and wondered if maybe she'd found something else entirely. The next morning, she woke to bird song and pale light filtering through the leaves. The fire had burned down to ash. She rebuilt it carefully, boiled water for tea using herbs she'd brought from Kansas, and ate a small piece of the bread the children had brought. She spent the morning washing her clothes in the creek, hanging them to dry on low branches. She explored the area, finding a patch of wild onions and some edible greens she recognized. She gathered dry wood and stacked it neatly. She made the space her own, small as it was. That evening, the children returned. This time they brought a tin mug and a handful of carrots. Miss Constance went to town today, Lily explained. So we could sneak more. They sat around the fire again, and this time Catherine asked them questions. What did they like to do? What were their favorite foods? What did they remember about their mother? Samuel opened up slowly, telling her about the horses, how he'd learned to ride when he was 5, how his mother used to take him out to check the fence lines. Alice showed her the corn husk doll, explained that her mother had made it the week before she died. Lily talked about missing her mother's voice, the songs she used to sing. Baby Ben just played with sticks in the dirt, content to be near them all. Can you read? Alice asked suddenly. Yes, Catherine said. Will you teach me? I know some letters but not all of them. I'd be happy to. Alice's face lit up. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, Catherine promised. Over the following days, the visits became ritual. The children came every evening without fail. They brought what they could, scraps of food, bits of soap, a comb with missing teeth, a worn book of poetry. They told her about their days, about Miss Constance's sharp words and their father's silence. They asked her questions, about her life, about the world beyond Copper Bend, about whether she thought things could ever get better. And slowly, without meaning to, Catherine began to teach them. She showed Alice how to braid her hair properly, smooth and even. She taught Samuel how to whittle a whistle from a willow branch, showed him the way to cut with the grain. She sang Lily a lullaby her own mother had sung, back when she still had a mother, when the world was smaller and safer. She let baby Ben sit in her lap and babble while she darned socks by firelight, his nonsense words becoming a kind of music. One evening, a week into her stay, Lily arrived alone. Her face was flushed and her hands were shaking. A bruise was forming on her upper arm, finger-shaped and dark. What happened? Catherine asked, setting down her sewing immediately. Miss Constance found the bread I took yesterday. Said I was a thief. Said she was going to send me away to work for a family in town who needs a maid. Said I'm old enough to earn my keep elsewhere. Catherine's chest tightened with anger. What did your father say? Nothing. Lily's voice cracked. He just stood there and let her say it. He looked at me like he was sorry, but sorry don't change nothing. Catherine pulled the girl into her arms and held her while she cried, stroking her tangled hair, feeling her own anger burning hot and bright. When Lily finally pulled away, her eyes were red but determined. I don't want to go, Lily said. I want to stay with you. Even here, even in a tent. I don't care. You can't, Catherine said gently. I'm not your family. I have no legal right to you. You're more family than she is. Lily's voice was fierce. She don't love us. She don't even like us. You listen when we talk. You remember things. That's what family does. The words hit Catherine like a fist. She thought of all the times she'd been passed along, all the times she'd been told she didn't belong, that she was taking up too much space, eating too much food, needing too much care. She thought of these children, hungry for something more than food, starving for someone to see them. And she made a decision. Come back tomorrow, Catherine said. All of you. We're going to talk to your father. And we're not leaving until something changes. The next day, Catherine woke early. She washed in the creek, braided her hair neatly, and put on her best dress, though it was wrinkled from being packed in the trunk. She wanted to look presentable, respectable. She wanted James Hartwell to see her as someone worth listening to. The children arrived mid-morning, all four of them, their faces nervous but hopeful. Catherine took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and led them up the hill to the ranch house. She didn't knock. She opened the door and walked straight in. James was sitting at the table, a cup of coffee in his hands, ledgers spread out in front of him. Constance was at the stove, her back rigid, stirring something in a pot. They both turned when Catherine entered, followed by the children. We need to talk, Catherine said. Constance's face went white with fury, then flushed red. How dare you walk into my house? It's not your house, Catherine said calmly. It's theirs. And they deserve better than what you're giving them. James stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Catherine, this isn't your concern. Yes, it is. Catherine's voice was steady, clear. You wrote to me. You asked me to come here and help with these children. You promised me a home and a purpose. Well, I'm here. And I'm not leaving until we figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, Constance said, setting down the spoon with a sharp crack. You're trespassing. Leave now or I'll have the sheriff remove you. Catherine turned to the children, who had arranged themselves behind her like a small army. Tell them. Tell them what you want. Lily stepped forward first, her voice shaking but clear. I want Miss Catherine to stay. She listens to us. She don't yell. She don't hit. She makes us feel like we matter. Samuel nodded, his hands clenched into fists. She taught me things. Real things. Not just chores. Alice held up her doll, the one with the repaired arm. She fixed Rosie. And she's teaching me to read. She promised. Baby Ben just reached his arms out toward Catherine, and she scooped him up automatically, settling him on her hip. He laid his head on her shoulder. James looked at his children, really looked at them, maybe for the first time in months. His face crumpled. I didn't know, he said quietly. I didn't know it was this bad. Because you didn't ask, Catherine said. You were so busy trying to save the ranch that you forgot what you were saving it for. These children have been disappearing right in front of you, and you didn't notice. That's not fair, James said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Catherine challenged. When's the last time you sat with them? Talked to them about their mother? Asked them how they're feeling? James had no answer. Constance slammed a pot down on the stove. This is ridiculous. I will not be replaced by some desperate woman who showed up uninvited. I have put money into this ranch. I have rights. Catherine met her gaze. I'm not trying to replace you. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I'm trying to give these children what they need. If you cared about them at all, you'd see that. But you don't care. You just want them to be quiet and invisible. How dare you judge me? I'm not judging you. I'm stating fact. You want a ranch. You want security. But you don't want children. So stop pretending you do. The room fell silent. Even the fire in the stove seemed to quiet. James looked at Constance, then at Catherine, then at his children gathered behind this stranger who had become their champion. I'll build you a cabin, he said finally. Down by the creek. You can stay there. Help with the children. I'll pay you what I can, and you'll have a roof and food. Constance's mouth dropped open. James, absolutely not. Yes, he said, his voice firm for the first time since Catherine had arrived. This is my land, my children, and my decision. I brought her here with my letters. I made a promise. I'm going to honor it, even if it's late. And me? Constance demanded. What about me? You can stay or you can go. But Catherine stays. Those children need her. They've made that clear enough. Constance stared at him for a long moment, her face a mask of fury and something else, maybe hurt, maybe just wounded pride. Fine, she said finally, grabbing her shawl from the hook by the door. But don't come crying to me when this all falls apart. Don't expect me to mother children who don't want me. She left, the door slamming behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. Dust motes danced in the sudden shaft of sunlight. James sank back into his chair, looking 10 years older than he had 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry, he said to Catherine. For all of it. For bringing you here under false pretenses. For not being strong enough to choose right the first time. Catherine set Ben down gently. Just don't let it happen again. These children have been hurt enough. I know. Do you? Catherine challenged. Because knowing and doing are different things. James nodded slowly. I'll start building tomorrow. The cabin. It won't be fancy, but it'll be solid. That's all I need, Catherine said. Over the following weeks, James kept his word. He worked on the cabin every spare moment, sawing and hammering, laying a stone foundation and raising walls. Samuel helped, handing him nails and boards, learning the craft. Lily and Alice gathered stones for the fireplace. Even baby Ben carried small sticks to add to the pile, proud to be useful. Catherine watched the structure take shape, this small house that would become hers. She continued living by the creek, but now she helped with chores at the main house during the day, cooking meals, mending clothes, teaching the children their letters and numbers. Constance stayed away, living at a boarding house in town, though she never officially left James. It was an arrangement that suited everyone. She'd appear occasionally to check on her investment, but she never spoke to the children and barely acknowledged Catherine. The cabin was finished in 3 weeks. One room with a stone fireplace, a real bed frame, a table, 2 chairs, and windows with actual glass. James had even built a small porch. It's yours, he said when he showed it to her. Such as it is. Catherine stood in the doorway, looking at the space that was now hers. It was simple, rough even, but it was solid. It was real. It was home. Thank you, she said quietly. The children moved her trunk in ceremoniously. They helped her arrange her few possessions. Lily picked wildflowers and put them in a jar on the table. Alice swept the floor until it shone. Samuel brought firewood and stacked it neatly by the hearth. Ben toddled around, touching everything, his laughter filling the space with something that felt like joy. That night, Catherine made her first fire in her own fireplace, in her own house, and the children gathered around it. She told them stories. She taught them a song. She promised them that this was just the beginning. Over the months that followed, life settled into a rhythm. Catherine woke with the sun, made breakfast, and walked up to the main house. She cooked meals that the children actually ate. She mended clothes that had been ignored for months. She taught lessons, both practical and academic. She bandaged scraped knees and soothed nightmares. The children flourished under her care. Lily started smiling more, her shoulders loosening from the constant tension she'd carried. Samuel began talking more freely, sharing his thoughts about the horses, about the land, about the future. Alice stopped having nightmares as frequently. Ben grew sturdy and strong, his laughter constant. James watched it all with something like wonder and shame. He worked the ranch, made decisions about crops and livestock, but he deferred to Catherine on everything involving the children. He'd made his choice, and he was trying to honor it as best he could. One evening, as summer began to fade into autumn, James came down to Catherine's cabin. She was sitting on the porch, mending one of Samuel's shirts by lamplight, the crickets singing their evening song. "Can I sit?" he asked. She nodded. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the creek and the insects. "I should have chosen differently," James said finally. "When you first arrived. I should have sent Constance away and honored my promise to you. Not as a wife, maybe, but as what you've become. A mother to them." "You made the choice you thought you had to make," Catherine said. "That doesn't make it right." He looked at her, his eyes tired but sincere. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know I'm grateful. For staying. For caring about them when I couldn't. For being strong enough to fight for them." "They needed someone to care," Catherine said. "That's all. Someone to see them." James reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "It's the deed to this land. I'm signing half of it over to you. Legal-like. So you'll always have a place here, no matter what happens. Whether I keep the ranch or lose it, whether Constance comes back or stays gone, this is yours." Catherine stared at the paper. "James, I can't accept this." "You already have." He pressed it into her hands. "You earned it the moment you walked up that hill and refused to leave. You earned it every day since. This is your home now, and it's theirs, and no one can take it from you." She held the paper carefully, feeling the weight of what it meant. Not marriage, not romance, but something more solid. Security. Belonging. A foundation. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded and stood to leave, then paused. "The children call you Mama Catherine now. You know that?" "I know. Does it bother you?" She looked up at him, her eyes clear. "No. It doesn't bother me at all. It's the greatest honor I've ever had." James smiled, just barely, and walked back up the hill. Catherine stayed on the porch, the deed in her lap, and looked out at the creek shimmering in the moonlight. She thought about the woman who had stepped off that stagecoach weeks ago, lost and desperate and alone. That woman was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who had been chosen not by a man or a marriage, but by 4 children who needed her more than they needed anything else in the world. And that, Catherine thought, was more than enough. Years passed. The cabin grew, another room was added, then another. Catherine saved money from the work she did, small amounts that added up over time. The garden expanded until it fed them all through winter. The children grew tall and strong. Lily became a teacher at the schoolhouse in town. Samuel took over more and more of the ranch work, his skill with horses becoming locally famous. Alice married a kind man from the general store. Baby Ben, no longer a baby, stood taller than Catherine by the time he was 15. James eventually divorced Constance when it became clear she would never return to ranch life. The paperwork was simple, the separation clean. He never remarried. He and Catherine remained friends, partners in raising the children, but never anything more. Some stories didn't need romance to be complete. The land flourished under their care. The creek never ran dry. And the cabin by the cottonwoods became known throughout the territory as a place where people could find refuge, where children who had nowhere else to go could find a home. One evening in late September, nearly 6 months after Catherine had arrived, a rider came up the path to the cabin. Catherine was teaching Alice her letters by lamplight while the other children played outside in the cooling air. The rider was a woman, middle-aged, with a hard face and harder eyes. "I'm looking for Catherine Moore," the woman said, not dismounting. Catherine stepped onto the porch. "That's me. I'm Helen Pritchard. I run the orphanage over in Silver Falls. Heard you've been taking in strays." Catherine stiffened. "I've been caring for children who need it. Without authorization. Without oversight." Helen's voice was sharp. "There are proper channels for these things. You can't just collect children like stray cats. These aren't strays. They're people. And they have a home here. For now," Helen said. "But what happens when you can't feed them all? When you run out of space? When they get sick and you have no medicine?" She shook her head. "I've seen women like you before. Full of good intentions and no sense. It always ends the same way, with children suffering." Catherine felt the children behind her, Lily, Samuel, Alice, and Ben, all watching. "I won't let them suffer. You may not have a choice." Helen turned her horse. "I'll be back in 2 weeks with the territorial judge. He'll decide what's best for these children. And I can tell you now, it won't be living in a cabin with a spinster who has no legal standing." She rode off into the dusk, leaving Catherine standing frozen on the porch. "What does she mean?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Are they going to take us away?" Catherine turned and knelt down, gathering all 4 children close. "No one is taking you anywhere. I promise." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Catherine cleaned the cabin until it gleamed. She organized their supplies, made lists of food and clothing, tried to think of every question a judge might ask. James came down every evening to help her prepare, coaching her on what to say, how to present her case. "You need to be calm," he said. "Logical. Show them you can provide." "I can provide," Catherine insisted. "Look at them. They're healthy, they're learning, they're happy." "I know that." James's voice was gentle. "But the law doesn't always care about happiness." "Then the law is wrong." "Maybe so. But you still have to work within it." The day the judge arrived, the sky was gray and threatening rain. Helen Pritchard came with him, along with a clerk and 2 men Catherine didn't recognize. They gathered in James's house, around the dining table, formal and cold. Judge Morrison was an older man with white whiskers and tired eyes. He looked over his spectacles at Catherine like she was a problem to be solved. "Miss Moore," he began. "I understand you've taken it upon yourself to care for several children without proper legal authority." "I've cared for children who needed caring for," Catherine said, her voice steady. "Children who were being neglected and mistreated." "That's a serious accusation," the judge said. "It's the truth." Catherine looked at James. "Ask their father." James cleared his throat. "It's true. Before Catherine came, I wasn't able to care for them properly. My wife, Constance, she wasn't kind to them. Catherine has given them stability. Love. Love doesn't override law, Helen Pritchard said sharply. These children need proper schooling, proper medical care, proper supervision. Miss Moore is unmarried, has no family in the territory, no established profession. She's living in a one-room cabin. It has 2 rooms now, Catherine said. And they're learning their letters. Alice can read simple words now. Samuel can do sums. They're fed, clothed, and safe. What more do they need? Structure, Helen said. Discipline. A proper Christian upbringing. They have those things. From an unmarried woman living alone? Helen's voice dripped with disdain. What kind of example is that? The kind that shows them love matters more than propriety, Catherine shot back. That kindness matters more than rules written by people who've never had to choose between dignity and survival. The judge held up a hand. That's enough. He turned to the children, who had been brought in and were standing against the wall, nervous and silent. Children, step forward. They did, Lily in front, the others clustered behind her. Tell me truthfully, the judge said. Are you happy living with Miss Moore? Yes, sir, Lily said immediately. All of you? 3 small voices echoed yes. Ben just nodded, thumb in his mouth. And before Miss Moore arrived? How were things then? Lily hesitated, glancing at her father. Hard, she said finally. We were hungry a lot. And scared. Scared of what? Of being sent away. Of not matching. The judge wrote something in his ledger. Miss Pritchard, he said. What exactly are you proposing? That these children be placed in my orphanage in Silver Falls, where they can receive proper care and education. Where they can be prepared for useful lives. Together? The judge asked. Helen hesitated. Well, no. Not necessarily. We place children where they're best suited. The older ones might go to families who need farm help. The younger ones could be adopted separately. No, Lily said, her voice sharp. We stay together. Child, that's not your decision, Helen said. Why not? Lily's eyes blazed. We're the ones you're deciding about. Don't we get a say? The judge looked at her with something like respect. You do, actually. Under territorial law, children over the age of 10 can express preference in custody matters. You're 12, correct? Yes, sir. And what do you prefer? I prefer to stay with Mama Catherine. Lily's voice didn't waver. She's more family than anyone else has ever been. The judge turned to Samuel. And you? You're 8. You're close enough to the age threshold. What do you want? To stay with Miss Catherine, Samuel said quietly. And my brother and sisters. All of us together. The judge sat back, studying them all. Miss Moore, he said. Do you understand what you're taking on? For children is no small responsibility. I understand. And if more come? If word spreads that you take in strays, as Miss Pritchard put it? What then? Then I'll make room, Catherine said. I'll build more space. I'll find a way. That's what you do for family. But they're not your family, Helen protested. You have no blood tie, no legal connection. Family isn't just blood, Catherine said. It's choice. It's commitment. It's showing up every day and doing the work. These children chose me, and I chose them. That makes us family. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to James. Mr. Hartwell, you're willing to support this arrangement? Yes, sir. I've already deeded half my land to Miss Moore. She has security here. And the children, they're thriving under her care in ways they never did before. The judge wrote something else, his pen scratching across paper. Miss Pritchard, I appreciate your concern for proper protocols. But the law also requires me to consider the best interests of the children. And from what I'm seeing, those interests are being served here. But she's unmarried, Helen said. It's improper. So are you, the judge pointed out mildly. Yet you run an orphanage. That's different. Is it? The judge closed his ledger. Here's my ruling. Miss Moore will be granted temporary guardianship of the Hartwell children for a period of 1 year. During that time, I'll send someone to check on conditions quarterly. If at the end of the year the children are healthy, educated, and wish to remain, I'll make the arrangement permanent. Your Honor, Helen protested. This sets a dangerous precedent. Perhaps. Or perhaps it sets a necessary one. Not everything that's unconventional is wrong, Miss Pritchard. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones we don't find in books. He stood, and everyone else scrambled to their feet. Miss Moore, he said. Don't make me regret this decision. I won't, Catherine said. I promise. After they left, the cabin erupted in celebration. The children hugged Catherine, laughing and crying at once. James shook her hand solemnly, his eyes bright. Even the neighbors who'd gathered outside to hear the news came in to congratulate her. But Catherine knew this was just the beginning. She had 1 year to prove herself. 1 year to show that love and commitment could be enough. She intended to make every day count. The months that followed were hard but good. Catherine established routines, schedules, lessons. She taught the children not just reading and arithmetic, but practical skills, cooking, sewing, animal care, carpentry. She made sure they had chores but also play. Structure but also freedom. The first quarterly inspection came in December. A stern woman named Mrs. Grayson arrived unannounced, poking into every corner of the cabin, questioning the children privately, examining their clothes and their lessons. Catherine held her breath the entire time. At the end, Mrs. Grayson sat down at the table and made notes in her ledger. The children are clean, she said finally. Well fed. Their lessons are adequate, though not exceptional. The living space is cramped but serviceable. Catherine waited. Mrs. Grayson looked up. More importantly, they're happy. And they clearly love you. She closed her book. I'll report that conditions are satisfactory. Keep up the good work, Miss Moore. Catherine nearly collapsed with relief. Winter passed, then spring. The second inspection went even better, the inspector commenting on how much the children had grown, how advanced Alice's reading had become, how capable Samuel was with the animals. By summer, word had spread. A boy showed up one July evening, skinny and bruised, asking if it was true that the woman by the creek took in children who had nowhere else. Catherine fed him, gave him a bed, and added him to the family. A girl came in August, running from an uncle who drank too much. Catherine made room. The cabin was bursting at the seams. James and Samuel built an addition, 2 more rooms. Neighbors donated supplies. The territorial church sent money. What had started as 1 woman and 4 children was becoming something larger. The third inspection was harder. The inspector was concerned about overcrowding, about resources. But the children vouched for Catherine, every single one of them, and the inspector left satisfied if not enthusiastic. By the time the year was up and Judge Morrison returned, Catherine had 9 children under her care. The cabin had grown to 6 rooms. The garden fed them all summer. The neighbors had formed a sort of unofficial support network, donating time and supplies. The judge walked through the property, noting everything. He spoke to each child individually. He examined the books Catherine kept, meticulous records of food, clothing, lessons, and expenses. Finally, he sat down with Catherine on the porch. This isn't what I expected, he admitted. What did you expect? For you to fail, honestly. Most do. The work is too hard, the resources too scarce. But you haven't failed. If anything, you've succeeded beyond measure. Catherine waited, hardly daring to breathe. I'm making the guardianship permanent, he said. Not just for the Hartwell children, but as a general authority. You're now officially recognized as a territorial guardian. Any child who comes to you can stay, provided you can care for them. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said. Just keep doing what you're doing. These children need you. This whole territory needs people like you. Over the following years, the refuge grew. More children came, abandoned, orphaned, running from bad situations. Catherine never turned anyone away. The buildings expanded. The land produced. The community supported her. Lily grew up and became a teacher, opening a school in the cabin's largest room. Samuel took over the ranch work entirely, managing the land with skill. Alice married a kind man and started her own family nearby. Ben, no longer a baby, became a skilled carpenter, building furniture and structures for the refuge. James remained a friend and partner, but nothing more. He worked the land, made decisions about the ranch, but deferred to Catherine on everything involving the children. He eventually remarried, a quiet widow from town who respected what Catherine had built and supported it. Constance never returned. Rumor said she'd moved east, married again, found a life that suited her better. Catherine aged gracefully, her hair turning silver, her hands growing gnarled from work. But her eyes stayed bright, her smile stayed warm, and her door stayed open. She became a legend in the territory, the woman who built a family from strangers, who proved that love was stronger than blood. One autumn evening, 20 years after she'd first stepped off that stagecoach, Catherine sat on her porch watching the sunset. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke and fallen leaves. Children played in the yard, her children, though none were born to her. Grandchildren toddled around, calling her Grandma Catherine. Lily came to sit beside her, gray threading through her brown hair now, her own children grown. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if he'd met you at that stage office? Lily asked. If he'd kept his promise? Catherine was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, she admitted. But I don't think I'd have been as happy. Why not? Because I wouldn't have found my purpose. She gestured at the yard, the children, the buildings, the life they'd built. This is what I was meant to do. Not be one man's wife, but be a mother to children who needed one. Sometimes the detours are actually the path. Lily leaned her head on Catherine's shoulder. We're lucky you took that path. So am I. As darkness fell, Catherine went inside to help with dinner. The long table was crowded with people, children and adults, family by choice rather than blood. They held hands while Samuel said grace, thanking God for the food, the home, and the woman who'd built it all. Catherine looked around at their faces, each one precious, each one chosen. She thought about that terrified woman who'd stood alone on a train platform with nothing but disappointment and determination. That woman would barely recognize her now. And that was exactly as it should be. After dinner, when the dishes were washed and the children tucked in, Catherine sat by the fire with James. They'd settled into an easy companionship over the years, partners in an unconventional family. Do you ever regret it? James asked. Not the romantic question, but the practical one. All this work, all this responsibility. Do you ever wish you'd gotten back on that stage and tried somewhere else? Never, Catherine said firmly. Not once. This is exactly where I belong. The fire crackled between them. Outside, an owl called from the cottonwoods. The creek murmured its eternal song. You know what the children call this place now? James said. The choosing place. Because you chose them, and they chose you. Catherine smiled. That's a good name. Better than the mail-order Bride's Refuge. Much better. They sat in comfortable silence until the fire burned low. Then James said goodnight and headed up to his own house. Catherine banked the coals, checked on the sleeping children one last time, and went to her own bed. She lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the house settling, of children breathing in nearby rooms, of life happening all around her. She thought about all the letters she'd never received from James, the ones telling her not to come. She thought about the letter she might have written to her younger self, warning her what she'd find. But she was glad that letter had never been sent. Because if she'd known, she might not have come. And then none of this, none of these lives, none of this love, would have existed. Sometimes the best things came from the worst disappointments. Sometimes the family you built was stronger than the one you were born into. Sometimes the home you chose was more real than the one you'd been promised. Catherine Moore had come west to be a wife. Instead, she'd become something far more important. She'd become a mother, a guardian, a builder of families, a creator of home. And when she finally closed her eyes for the last time, many years later, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who called her theirs, she went peacefully. She'd lived a good life, a full life, a life that mattered. The refuge continued after her death, run by Lily and then by Lily's daughter. The buildings still stand. The creek still runs clear. And people still tell stories about Catherine Moore, the mail-order bride who never married but built a family anyway. They tell stories about how love is a choice, how family is built through action, how home is created by someone willing to make space for you. And in those stories, Catherine Moore lives forever, the woman who proved that sometimes the greatest love stories have nothing to do with romance at all.